Hi there folks, Skullgrim140, welcome back to another Transformers review, and we're going to continue on with looking at scientist characters again, because seeing as I reviewed Wheeljack a little while ago, I think it'd be fair to continue this theme, to see where it goes, until we can move on to something a bit more interesting. But yeah, we're looking at another scientist, and it's a well-known character, very well-known, who of course is out to increase and improve on his intelligence and knowledge. But despite that, though, he has one flaw in that depending on what he's getting into and the inventions he's making, he can ramble on for hours on end. Until one of the characters, depending on who he's interacting with, will tell him to shut up and get on with it. But that's just how he is. Today we're going to take a look at Reveal the Shield Perceptor. This is really one of those toys that stands out for having a bit of a mixed reception. You either like him or you don't. I think he's okay, but he has some problems, though. But we'll get onto that later on. But what can we really be said about Perceptor? Because Perceptor is a well-known character thus far. In that, Perceptor, of course, is a scientist, a very intelligent scientist, and he's one of the most astute minds that Cybertron can really offer. And his whole reason for being is that he's out to improve and increase on his intelligence and knowledge, and discover new things. But pretty much one of the things that he's best known for doing is that, depending on what he gets into, he can ramble on for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on end, and to the point where one of the characters will just tell him to shut up and get to the point, depending on what the subject is, depending on what the invention he's made. But I like the character nonetheless. The character really does shine on a lot of occasions, and you kind of wish you kind of really wish he had a lot more to do, despite some of the appearances he's had so far. But Perceptor, as what he's done so far as a character in all the things he's been in, he's had a lot of roles thus far. In the show, of course, he shows up in Dinobot Island Part 2, where you see him helping Chip Chase unravel the whole time warp discrepancy that happened in that episode. And in Microbots, where he actually had a little bit more development, is that when you see him and Bumblebee and Brawn shrink themselves down to teeny-weeny size to fit inside Megatron to retrieve the heart of Cybertron. And this was an episode where where both Perceptor and Brawn had to acknowledge each other as equals, basically. To just acknowledge each other as friends a bit more. And as the show would unfold, of course, Perceptor would manage to shine a lot of the time. His character would shine a lot of the time, and be a lot more useful than a lot of people would think he would be. In the episode Cosmic Rust, he invented a formula known as Core Stop to help prevent the Statue of Liberty from rusting, and he used it on Megatron to cure him of his Cosmic Rust problem. And as the show would later unfold, up to about Season 3, he would later fill the shoes of Wheeljack, in that he would be the Autobot scientist and help out in a lot of ways to basically be a huge improvement for the Autobot group. And in the cartoon, he was, of course, voiced by Paul Eiding, who, outside of Transformers, is known for two roles in most things that he's been in that, he was best known for playing the voice of Conroy Campbell in Metal Gear Solid, and he was the voice of Grandpa Max in Ben 10. So, and if you want to know more about what he's been in, go on IMDb, look him up. He's a great voice actor. But yeah, in Season 3, he had some minor roles where his character managed to just be a background character half the time, sadly. His last role in the American continuity was in The Face of Najika, where the Autobots alongside Cyclonus crashed landed on the planet Zamojin, where Katsudon found Perceptor, carved out his insignia, and used it in the doll Najika. And it was a weird episode. I couldn't really follow what happened throughout that episode most of the time. In the comics, of course, in the original Marvel comics, he was still just an Autobot scientist, where he was part of an Autobot group in the Dead End region of Cybertron, serving, of course, as the scientist, where he would lead a mission to save the captured blaster from being executed by Lord Straxus. And he would have some later roles in the Marvel comics up until the very end of the G2 series, where, of course, he was one of the scientists studying the victims of the swarm and studying the whole nucleon effect as well. And in fun publications as well, he had a few stories as well, and in the Dreamwave comics, he would appear throughout several of the War Within issues as well. And he also appeared in the second volume of G1, where he was part of a resistance movement opposed to Shockwave, where he appears pleading to the Cybertronian Council to investigate Shockwave's modifications on the other Transformers. And he appeared in Devil's Due as well, in the Devil's Due G.I. Joe vs. Transformers comic as well. And recently, in the IDW series, outside of the ongoing series and Last Stand of the Wreckers, where the character really stands out quite well, he appears in Cup's Spotlight in that he was aboard the ARC-17 trying to recover the Autobot veteran. And of course he appeared as well in the Blaster Spotlight, where he was on board the Autobot Orbital Command Hub. So the character has had a lot to do. This character is really more than what he is, and I like him a lot, because Perceptor really does stand out a lot more for being more than a scientist, I think. He's a fighter, he's a badass, he's a scientist, and he's just one of those characters that you want to have around for a lot of different reasons, depending on what they are, despite the fact that he can ramble on for a lot of different reasons. But yes, now that I've rambled myself on about this character, as I do with a lot of the time with most of the toys I review, we are now going to cut straight onto the toy. This is the toy, the Reveal the Shield version of this character, and, you know, the one thing that I'm pretty sure a lot of people remember Perceptor for is that his alt mode originally in G1 was, of course, a microscope. And whereas other Transformers would turn into cars and trucks and planes, Perceptor's alt mode would be a microscope, and it would do nothing. So, yeah. Also, he's a scientist. What more can you really do with this character except just have him just be a generic car? I like it, the fact that he chose something out of the ordinary. But of course, this alt mode that he has now, is something a bit different. It's a scientific expedition car, which is resembling that of a Land Rover Defender or a Jeep Commander, and it's combining the elements of both his G1 version and his animated counterpart as well. I like this alt mode a lot, and it really does stand out quite well. But to be fair though, I do have some problems with it though. I'll go through those as we go along. All over this figure you can see there's not really much colouring. You can see some colouring of the grey windows, of course, and the nice detail on the treads and on the wheels as well, and the yellow windows as well, which is quite nice. But at the same time, though, if you want more detail, though, I would highly recommend you get the United version, because that one has got far more detailing on the grille and on the windows than anything else, and that's what makes this character, this version of the toy, stand out a little bit. And of course, on the back you have the inscriptions Mr. 5, 1409, which that's supposed to mean something. I think it's supposed to mean the birth of Bill Rawley. Sort of. If you don't know who Bill Rawley is the production manager in Hasbro. I don't really care that much about this whole thing. I just thought I'd bring it up. But this toy does have some problems though, and he is quite a nice toy. But the color scheme, of course, is really, really bland, and I really wish it could have done a bit better. The designers of this figure could have done better with the color scheme. But then again, if you want better colors, get the United version. I highly recommend it. But it is a nice toy though, and of course it can roll quite well. And of course, like all Transformer toys that have either tanks or whatever, the treads don't move. And sadly, the wheels aren't really painted individually. But then again, that could have been improved. I would have liked to see the wheels painted individually to just make that stand out a little bit more. But hey, how are we gonna do? But of course, one thing as well that I like about this figure as well is that it hides the robot mode quite nicely, even though you can see the robot arms. What are we gonna do? But this figure is quite nice despite this bland color scheme. But now, the second problem, and I'm going to talk this through, is that the transformation to his robot mode is a long and painful one, in that this toy suffers from the same thing that Galvatron, the Universe Galvatron has, in that Universe Galvatron has a very long and complicated, unnecessarily complicated transformation. This one does as well in some way, and it will take a while for the transformation to be complete. So the one thing I'll do, of course, is pull out the legs, and occasionally the legs will often fall off most of the time. So that's one thing you don't want to have this guy doing, is just the legs falling off on a regular occasion. But I guess it really can't be helped. I would have liked to see that as an improvement to this toy, but I think it is what it is, and it does what it needs to do. So it doesn't really need to be this complicated, though. I think that the transformation for Perceptor needs to be at least simplistic in a lot of ways. But yeah, just got the legs out of the way, just move the treads down a little bit, and of course get the waist to click like so. And of course, separate the arms and just line them up with the body. And yes, you can hear there's a lot of clicking going on, but that's fine. That's not a problem at all. And of course, finally lift the robot head up with this button right at the back. And there you go. There you pretty much have Perceptor in his robot mode. Now, a lot of people will say that the alt mode for this figure is bland, and it's okay. I wouldn't say that it's perfect, but I like the alt mode though. It's something different to what Perceptor has, despite the fact the the colors for that alt mode are kind of crap. But the robot mode, on the other hand, is really, really good. I like this robot mode a lot because the way that this robot mode is designed is more to how he looks in the IDW comics and how he looks in the cartoon than anything. Let's look at the head sculpt first of all. I like the head sculpt a lot because, unlike the original G1 toy, which of course had a very plain head and show accuracy wasn't really on its main objective, the head sculpt on this is more loyal to how he looks in the comics as well as the cartoon, and it looks really nice. Can't see it, come on, focus. But he has yellow light piping, which is quite nice. You can shine a powerful LED through there, and of course the head can rotate as well. Not for the full 360, but it can rotate from side to side. But there you go. Articulation aside, of course, with all Transformers, the articulation is quite basic. The arms can rotate full 360 and are on ball joints. The limbs can rotate as well. Elbows are quite nice, and the knees can bend quite firmly and can swivel right there, which is quite nice. And of course, open up the chest compartment and you see some detailing in the chest, as well as the Autobot insignia right there, which of course is a Rob-on Rob-off symbol, which is quite nice. You can see that he's an Autobot right there. The third problem as well is that occasionally these will fall out. They will not stay in properly. You need something like blue tack or something to stay in properly, to make sure that it won't fuck around. But then again, it's one of those things that doesn't pose a major problem to this figure, I think. But I like this figure altogether. I really would highly recommend it. If you like something with a complicated transformation that's fun in any way or another, I'd recommend that you get the United version of this toy, because this one is it's a bit bland in the colors, but the United version of this is by far better than this, I think. One thing as well that I like as well is that you can see on the arms, it has the knobs on the microscope mode. And speaking of microscope mode, I've seen a lot of attempts to see people recreate that mode, and a lot of them have been good. I will show you one of the many modes you can have this guy in, and one of the microscope mode you can have him in. But with that being said, let's wrap this up. You can actually have this guy in all sorts of poses because he is quite poseable. Let's get him in one of the more convenient poses to make him look a bit more badass, to make him how he looks in Last Stand of the Wreckers, because in that comic he is really badass. But yes, there you go. This is Reveal the Shield Perceptor. I like the character a lot. The character really does shine for being a scientist, and he manages to do so much more than what you would actually expect him to do. The toy is okay, I think. It has some flaws, but I think it could be improved on. But if you want a better version of this toy, I would highly recommend you get the United version. It's by far the better version of this toy in terms of color scheme and detailing. There are a lot of things I wish that could have been fixed with this toy, but hey-ho. And maybe in the next couple of years we'll see a better version of this toy. But for the moment, though, I like this toy for what it is. It's probably the more show-accurate version of Perceptor that we've got so far, and how he looks in detail and design. So it's pretty good. I highly recommend it. So anyway, this has been Reveal the Shield Perceptor, and I am Skullgrim140. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you all next time. Bye.